You know that I'm a big believer that it's important to be on time. So I've given as long as I can. I waited the entire 60 to 75 seconds here from the time we launched to let everybody join us. So welcome, welcome. Grab some note-taking materials. I couldn't have planned the timing of this webinar or seen that foresight based on everything going on in the environment. And there's been a lot of work behind the scenes to get this content ready to bring as much resource, as much direction as we possibly can to get you thinking critically about your business and how you're going to approach cash flow, through this very difficult time for some, through a time of growth for others. There's business owners from all different walks, all different situations that are on today. And we're going to do our very, very best to bring you as much valuable content as we can. I will give one clear expectation. I have changed this deck, if you can imagine, daily. With all the changes that have happened. So please keep in mind, you may see more bigger blocks of text. It may not be as pretty as normally as I can make it for visibility purposes. Just understand we're trying to get as much content as we can from everybody. So thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited to get into the content and help support as much as we possibly can. My name is Casey Clark. If you haven't met me, I am the CEO of Cultivate Advisors. We're so glad to have you. Again, a reminder, this is a webinar only for our clients. So if you are on, you are experiencing and talking to other people in the chat that are taking the commitment to grow, scale, protect their business, and working with one of our advisors in a one-on-one setting. So we welcome you. We're so glad you've joined us. As far as who else is going to be joining me, a little later, I'm going to bring in Kyle Wyrick out of Austin. He's one of our really talented business advisors. He's got an unbelievable handle on financials and how to structure them for organizations. Really excited for him to share some of his wisdom and what he's seeing in the current environment. We'll get to him in a little bit later. We're the two that are going to be helping navigate today's conversation and some of this great content. Again, I know a lot of you have joined us before, so you know this, but I always just like to put out the reminder, and we also have some new folks that maybe are joining us for the first time on the webinar with us. So we use chat a lot. I see most of you have already found it. Fantastic. Please jump in there, ask questions. I've got advisors standing by, ready to help answer questions to the best of our ability. We do download the chat after and follow up if we don't feel like a question got answered with those individuals. That's one of the ways that we can really get engaged with you through this platform. So please utilize the chat. Know that I'm going to be throwing out some different polls or sharing some different resources and links throughout the webinar. So just keep an eye for that. Those are going to pulse out to the group. And then as always, post-webinar, we'll make sure this recording comes back out, but also really point you in the right direction of what are the right resources to check out, take advantage of that connects to our content today that you can find when you log into the Learning Center with us. So I want to start with a couple community updates here just to get us into the groove of things. We obviously know this is a tough time, as I mentioned, as I kicked off. We've got a promise we want to give to you. And I want to let everyone of you know that my entire team, all the advisors, our entire support staff, we are committed and we are by your side. There are some businesses that are literally in the point of shutdown mode. There are other businesses that are thriving. It is a crazy time for everyone. And as we're navigating this, I just want to make sure you know that we are committed and by your side. We're willing to do additional touch points. Hours don't really matter to us right this moment. We are nonstop brainstorming as a team. I cannot get this thing to turn off in terms of the amount of conversations we're having internally on the phone to help connect and help problem solve for every business owner. This is the value of the community coming together. This is the value of our advisors as a pool being able to come together to support you and best practice sharing. We've got an open door policy, so please reach out to us. We're here to help. We're obviously praying for good health for everyone, your teams, your clients, your employees, and we're confident that this will pass. And it's going to be tough as we navigate the waters for many, but we're confident that it will pass, and we're confident if you implement the right strategies, you will be around to tell some great stories of how you either grew through this, how you maintained, how you survived. No matter the situation or industry you're in, you're going to have a story. And I'm excited for all of us to be able to create those. And I think there's a lot of opportunity that can come out of this. And we're going to focus on the glass being half full versus half empty today as we go through this call. I've got to start with some positivity from this community. I just got to tell you, we ran the data and we pulled it all in from last year. I know it may feel a little sour to share this now based on some businesses really struggling, but I had to share it because it was just such a big win last year. The community, we pulled the data in, 65% average top line growth for clients that were with us for 12 months, and then 108% average bottom line profit growth for clients that were with us for 12 months. We're just really excited to share that, not in pursuit of us. It's all the work that all of you are doing. And I just thought there's a lot of negativity right now. It'd be good to share some positivity. There's some really big wins last year. And even more so of why we need to make some shifts right now in this current environment to continue that track when the economy comes back a little bit and we can kind of navigate these waters. So anyway, shout out to everybody. Fantastic job. For those that don't know, you can find all of our event schedules by logging into my.cultivateadvisors.com. This is our go-to list here of events this year. And again, you can get access to all these events online. Just want to give you a quick reminder before I dive in. We have launched our Catapult registration. Our conference is in November, early November. We have confidence that that's going to maintain and happen. If for some reason it does not, we will run a kick butt virtual conference if we have to. So be rest assured to make those plans, clear those days, and make sure you get registered for it now so we can lock your ticket in. As far as the Cultivate Your Success, our quarterly live events, we are expecting to move that virtual. Because it's April 22nd, we're going to wait to make that call for another week, but just based on kind of where things are going, as you can imagine, I would expect that that's going to be virtual. We'll send out that formal announcement once we're ready to make it. We are going to be talking about driving revenue forward in 2020. We're absolutely going to be shifting that topic to be how to drive revenue in the current environment. We're going to wait to see what shifts and make that content available when we get there. And do know that we are going to be looking for maybe a couple different potential topics and have different types of rooms you can jump into based on your core need as you're working through the current environment. So just make sure you've got that on your date. Again, that's in the morning, and we'll get those times out if we go virtual for everyone. We are sponsored by JustWorks. They sponsor all of our content in our community. They are my go-to HR solution. I use them personally. I'm absolutely a huge fan of the PEO world because they protect you from things like this, and they've been an awesome resource for me in this current time. If you don't have someone to reach out to about your HR, payroll, or compliance questions right now, because I know a lot of us have them, JustWorks is a great place to start. Reach out to an advisor. We'll get you connected with our go-to rep. Really big fans, and just really happy to keep announcing the partnership we have with them. All right, let's dive in. That's enough. Remember, as I'm walking through these details, we've got a lot of content. I'm going to be talking about content from all different 5 stages, so just be conscious of that. I'm going to be hitting folks for B2B. I'm going to be hitting tips for B2C. We're coming in from such a wide spread. Please just be respectful of that when we're going through the content. With all the different situations for everyone, my expectation of you is that you find the points that matter for you. It's about that 5 or 10 minutes of content we're going to hit that was exactly what you needed to hear. It's going to be a bit of a fire hose today with how much content we've prepared. And it's not going to be rocket science. You've probably said, I've thought of this. Maybe we're going to confirm it, or you've heard some stories from other folks. Ultimately, just keep in mind it's your responsibility to be selfish and look for that learning, because we're going to bring you a ton of content. And graduated learning, I share this every time. Again, it's about moving up 1 or 2 steps. We're going to be talking about how to approach the current environment and very specific to what's happening, but we're still going to be teaching the skill of cash flow today. And we're going to be connecting some of those elements, because really all that's happening in cash flow is that it's just made a bigger need to get better at the skill overnight. I see this as a huge opportunity. We need to get better at this skill so that we can take on situations like this better, but also outside of these situations allows us to run a smoother and more successful and profitable and faster growing business. So just keep in mind, you're on one of these steps. Your goal is to move up 1 or 2 steps today. That's your goal. So here's the agenda we've prepared. We're going to slow down, talk about the environment, talk about the mindset that's happening right now. We're going to move then to how do you assign a cash flow threshold? What is that cash number that you are going to hold as a threshold to make all decisions? We're then going to pull that back into what levers you can actually utilize to help maintain that cash position. And then we're going to talk about how to generate different scenarios that are going to help you identify the individual decisions to make at what timing, so you can remove some of that stress and start to have more confidence on how to know your numbers and how to move the business forward through some of these trying times. So let's do the quick chat. And a lot of you have already told us where you're coming from. Fantastic. I'm looking for this. What are you specifically hoping to gain from this webinar? Why did you jump on this today and take the time out to get better at cash flow, to discuss how to approach this with the current economic environment? Jump in the chat. It allows me to come and start to tailor some of the content, because I will adapt based on what people are saying they're most interested in. So I'm just going to give a moment for everybody to type in the chat. What are you hoping to gain from this webinar? And if that helps, again, that's the agenda we're going to be following. Jill, great. Yeah, a lot of people are locked in right now. How are we going to create cash flow? Getting ahead of cash if maybe the business isn't shut down or you're starting to see a slower turn. Great. How to manage a cushion properly. We got some stuff on that. Great. How to put a year of expenses in the bank. I love that goal. A lot of people are going to be more focused on how much cash is in the bank after going through this experience, I'm sure. Different revenue generation ideas. I've got a couple slides on that. Fantastic. How do you proactively prepare for the decrease of revenue? Great. Awesome. Yeah, it's a great point. Worldwide shutdown, but debt's still going to be serviced. How does this work? Yeah, awesome. Okay, these are fantastic. Keep posting if you've got a few more. Again, even if I don't hit on these things, we'll go back and circle back. This helps us curate our content as we continue to figure out what to bring as resources to the entire community. One of the things that I'll share here, just to set clear expectations, we don't have all the answers figured out. We're navigating the same way you are. We do have a very unique lens that we are able to look across a lot of different businesses, a lot of different industries, and a lot of different markets. And we can see the trends, we can see the better practices ideas. So no, that's where a lot of this content is being curated from, and it's not going to be necessarily exactly tailored or perfect. That's why we do the one-on-one advising services. So when you're taking notes, look for those opportunities to bring those back in discussion with your advisors. I'm going to slow down the current environment here. I want to ask this poll so I understand who's in the room. Let's go ahead and launch that. I want to know, how are you feeling about this current environment, and how has it or will it affect your business potentially? And we're going to go ahead and get that launched. And what I'm looking for is, I can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, as in maybe that's how you're feeling. I have concerns, but I know I can navigate this. And then I really don't think it's going to affect me at all. Where are you at on that groove? We're at about 60% of folks that have answered. We'll give just another few seconds for those pondering. All right, the data seems to be fairly accurate here. We'll go ahead and post that. So what we're seeing here is a high majority, 85%, I kind of assume this, they have concerns, but you feel you can navigate this, and that's fantastic. That's the same answers we've heard from our advisors that they've been checking in with all of you. So that's stayed very consistent. There's absolutely a few that are saying, look, I just don't know if I see the light in the tunnel. Either I started with too slow of cash flow, or there's just too many odds against me. We're going to do our best to help flip some of those perspectives. And then I see on the other outside, there's a few that are going, hey, I don't know if this is overall going to affect me, may even mean some growth because of your specific business. Again, just showing we are pretty well spread, but I'm glad to see people are staying calm and approaching this in a way to go, there's concerns, but let's make sure we navigate appropriately. Thanks for that. Let's go back to our chat. All right. So I want to share my story. In 2009, I shared this when I sent out the letter on Friday to the community. I had been in a painting franchise for 4 years at this point, and I'd got tapped on the shoulder a year prior and said, we want you to go help grow this organization, start launching a bunch of painting franchises, across the Midwest. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. I was young. I was super, super excited to make the impact for the business. And I will never forget that moment of talking to other business owners in the market and what their perspective was in the environment with this massive financial crisis that happened back then. And what I really learned from this experience is we had to pivot. We had to pivot. And because I necessarily didn't know any other way to do it, it was all a mindset game for me. And I was able to get 50 plus franchise owners and all their workers to rally behind this concept of, no matter what's up against us, we're going to solve this. Conversion rates were plummeting. We were seeing people saying, we don't want to invest in our home. We just lost all the money in the stock market. It was nonstop holding us back. And we came up with this clever idea. We said, we're only going to paint the second story of houses. And we ran with a campaign, and we started knocking on doors saying, you just lost your money in your stock market. You have to make sure you have money for your asset, which is the home. It's probably going to be their biggest asset you have for most of you. What we're going to do is paint the second story of your home, because you couldn't buy enough supplies to paint the second story of your home. It'd be cheaper to pay us. We went off, we made that happen, absolutely crushed it. What we found was that our average order size lowered immediately. We were able to convert at a higher number. What ended up happening in the summer then is, when we were there, it was a simple upsell. Things had started to slow down a little bit. People were a little more comfortable. And we were able to say, can we paint the bottom too? They were happy to say yes. We ended up actually growing a ton that year. And it was because we went so fast and shifted so quickly. It was one of the best learning experiences I've probably had in business. And it's what I'm going to be providing in terms of some of our content as we navigate today. So I can absolutely understand how people are feeling right now. Our skill increased, our screws were tightened, our productivity grew because we had to become better at running the business during that time. We accepted the situation, that's a must, but we did not accept failure. And that's what I'm asking everyone to think about. You are not accepting failure, you are accepting the situation. It's very important. What's really neat about this specific story is over the next 3 years, we ended up growing 5x. Competition was gone. That was a massive opportunity for us to jump. We just ran the business smarter. And so many things we implemented during that downturn maintained as our normal. And we were able to just go so fast. So there's the opportunity. And this market, it's real, right? There's absolutely the downturn coming, but I wanted to show you these graphs in case you haven't taken a look. We also need to remember where we've come from and how much growth has happened in the economic markets. It's easy to get caught up into what's happening on that day or that big plunge that day. As owners, we have to be business leaders in the community. We have to look at the macro world of what's happening. And I'm asking you to keep that in mind as you navigate this environment. And this coronavirus, this is a thing that's just rare, right? How often can we look back and go, there was an epidemic where literally people are not allowed to come out of their homes or they're forced into quarantine. This is the big unknown that's really causing some pain. And again, my biggest ask for all of you is don't spend time on what you cannot control. Do not spend your time processing, being paralysis. It's time to take action. You have to start driving the business, not worry about what you cannot control. The government's going to do what they're going to do to help support, and there's moral values of what everybody has to do to keep everyone safe. We can't control that at this current time. We can control how we approach our business due to the times. And I want to make sure we're on the same page. So again, some of you are on fire. I know that. I'm going to speak to you as we walk through this. Some of you are running from the fire. I've got some elements to share with you as well to get in front of it. Others, you're just going to protect from the potential fire. You're not necessarily in an industry that's going to be overly affected by this or as of yet. And so we want to set you up to be in front of it and not reactionary to it. So the question I want to know is, what type of owner are you right now in this process? Are you being emotional instead of logic? Are you lacking the cash clarity? Do you not have any rules in place right now? Have you not put some black and white structure around this? Are you looking at your personal situation and making decisions based off of that versus the long-term survival or sustainability of your business? Are you feeling hopeless? Are you feeling paralyzed? Is it, I'm going to go take a break? We know some businesses are moving to that. In fact, I continue to hear out in the market, I see people say, looks like I'm taking off for the next 4 weeks. And I'm going, wrong decision. Not what you want to do. I know there's going to be a lot of problem solving with childcare. There's so many things that potentially are against us with this type of structure that we're all going to be problem solving. But this is where you have to move to. You have to use logic over emotion. You have to make sure cash rules are in place. You've got to put the business decisions in front of the personal decisions. There's going to be a lot of hard business decisions for a lot of owners right now. And you've got to find the opportunity and you've got to get creative. Creativity I've been blown away at what I've heard from some of our clients already and what they're doing. I can't wait to hear some of those success stories as we get into it. But it's about finding the opportunity and leveraging that. And the question is, what's your fate? Are you looking at this as, sorry, we're going to be closed forever? Or the downturn's coming, I'm going to shield, I'm going to protect? Or are you looking to kick butt and come out of this when the smoke clears? Your mindset will totally dictate your approach. Your team will feel it. Your clients will feel it. Your customers. So owners that are fearful are going to start to, that's going to come across. Taking those breaks, right? None of us should be accepting that fate. We should be instead understanding that, yes, we're being forced to work remote. We're maybe not permitted to operate. Some people are in that situation. Maybe our traditional revenue is obsolete. These are all things that we might be feeling. We have to be creative. We have to look at pivots and we have to have a plan. And that's what we're going to help you navigate in our one-on-one meetings and advising. So the big theme here is do not panic. Instead, take action. And I'm confident that a lot of you are already in that pursuit, but I want you to hear that very clearly and really take that to heart and go, am I panicking right now? Where am I showing that panic? How am I creating confidence in my consumers? How am I creating confidence with my teams? And that's going to be how you take action. So this is why the agenda is what it is. With or without a pandemic, you should know your numbers, but with a pandemic, even more so, you have to now know your numbers. So those of you that maybe said, I don't necessarily need to learn the financial world of my business is tight, think again. Now you have to. So step one, you're going to assign a cash threshold. Again, we're going to walk through these. Step two, we're going to show you how to pull those cash flow levers and make sure you're clear on what all your options are. And step three, we're going to help you build some cash scenarios. Those are the 3 steps that I'm asking everyone to follow to then be able to make decisions on what to do in this current environment. This is a propeller that we use to help describe the engine of a business. This is something we use internally. I'm really excited to share this with everyone. The reason why I wanted to slow this down is this is how we break down businesses. If you're curious, how does Cultivate Advisors break down a business so quickly? What we're looking at is we're looking at the eye of the engine is the financial cash flow. That leads into our blades, which is sales and marketing on the growth side, our leadership and recruiting on the capacity side, and then productivity is all through in with tech automation and systems to advance productivity, and calendar management as well at the top there for productivity. That's all kind of woven throughout. And this is how we think about the structure and growth of an organization. But I want to slow down. This webinar, we're talking about the financial engine. The cash is what you need to know more than anything today. And what I want you to remember is when this is all done and over, the cash is everything you need to know and the numbers you need to have in the decisions. This is the opportunities that you can advance your skills in this world. So let's get into some deeper content. I'm going to talk about how to assign this cash threshold. And so I need to get an idea of who's on the call here. What is your current cash flow plan situation? We're going to launch this poll. This will be one of our last polls here. I don't have a strong cash flow plan, or maybe you built a 2020 cash flow plan and you're still on it. You haven't adjusted it yet. Or I've updated my plan with multiple scenarios already based on everything that's happening. Or hey, I have enough cash cushion, so I'm not overly concerned. Give everybody just a moment here. We're at about 50% here. Some people are still pondering and reading, no problem. There we go, we're starting to catch up. All right, I'm gonna go and stop it there for purposes of time. Pretty good in terms of overall engagement there. So it looks like the largest percentages, I don't actually feel like I have a strong cash flow plan. I'm not surprised. There's been so many things that have changed. Some are still using the 2020. It looks about 22%, and then 18% or so has started to drive. And there's a few percentage of people going, look, I've got enough cash cushion. I'm not concerned right now, which is a great place to be. You're most likely, those folks are most likely going to be in a place where they have a better understanding of the financials and they've been able to accumulate and create that for themselves. That's really helpful though. I know where I'm going to approach my time at. Thank you. So let's talk about why a cash threshold. Again, it's about being able to be objective and not emotional. It's so easy to be emotional with money. How many people freaked out at the markets crashing, or how many people got emotional when they realized the type of cuts they're going to have to make or the decisions they're going to have to make? It doesn't need to be emotional. Bring it back to objectivity as best as you possibly can. You need to make sure when you're thinking of a cash threshold that your risk tolerance is understood. And the way I think of it is what will have you sleeping like a baby at night? What will have you sleeping so soundly? That's where your risk tolerance is. People always have a hard time describing it. That's how I've learned to navigate it for myself is, am I sleeping at night very comfortably? And it should be based on stress testing the cash in the bank. That's how you're going to understand why that cash threshold is what it is. And so why do you have stress tests? I don't know, losing half your clients or customers could be a reason. Credit card processor money is stalled. They don't pay you out fast enough. Maybe you get put into a massive lawsuit, unfortunately. Or maybe you take on, a time-sensitive investment, an opportunity presents, you have to be able to deploy the cash. Or in the current situation, the coronavirus takes over the world, right? How many folks found themselves saying things like, what possibly could ever happen where I need that much cash in the bank? Well, now you know. This is exactly why. So my personal rule, I want 2 times the expenses in the bank, not including my cost of goods sold, meaning those expenses that I don't have to spend unless I have revenue coming in. So I want that burn. I want 2 months of that in the bank, no questions asked. And I actually personally run it on debt. I don't keep my own money in the bank. I have private investors. I put debt aside. And yes, I pay $100,000 in interest a year. I sleep like a baby because I know I have the cash. That is just insurance money, in my opinion. It's a very high premium insurance bill, but allows me to sleep. I have enough cash to navigate as we need. We're healthy in these type of environments. That's how I personally operate, and I've continued to find businesses that operate this way, that have the true threshold and have a clear number, and they never allow to go below that number. Never allowed to go underneath that number under any circumstances. Not this one time. That's the threshold, and it's got to be based off of math when you're creating it. So what is your cash threshold? I want to go through a quick exercise so we can maybe figure that out. I want you to take your dollar monthly burn amount. So just maybe pull up a P&L, or if you know your numbers generally, it might be a quick guess. For some, it might be hard. Go ahead and write down the process of how to get there. And after the webinar, you'll take the time to go do this. But I want you to think about the number of months in burn that you're going, what's the dollar amount, I'm sorry, of monthly burn, and then what's the number of months you want that by. That's just an easy way to get to what the total cash threshold should be, meaning that's the dollar amount we never are going to go below. Again, my rule of thumb is usually 2. Different industries, different speed and agilities of the business could potentially dictate how that's approached. You build your cash flow pro forma from this number. And some of you said, I don't have a strong cash flow plan. You need to raise that up to the very first item on your roadmap with your advisors. You might have been focused on different projects or different elements, and they might have been the most important at the time. But now we're moving everyone into cash flow pro formas. We have to see the numbers and get that tighter if you're in a bad situation. All decisions are then run through your cash flow pro forma. So again, without a cash threshold, the pro forma is like, well, I guess it works. It's like, no, you have to look at each monthly cash, and do you ever dip below that number? And then you even have to look inside of the month based on when the expenses hit and when the revenue's collecting. Will I ever dip on my operating cash flow? Those are the numbers that have to drive. Good question on what is a cash flow pro forma. Essentially, it's either a week over week, most likely a month over month look of revenue, all of your expenses, all of your CapEx below in terms of all their expenditures coming out that tell you what your cash flow is going to move every month. There's a few people that may not know what that is. We have templates and tools for you to use to help you build this if you haven't engaged with your client, with your advisor on that yet, based on where the business is at. Get one quick with your advisor. If you don't have one in place, I want you to email your advisor right now and say, this is at the top of our list. What do I need to bring to our next meeting to put this cash flow pro forma in place? And you should be ready to share what is your cash threshold that you want to have. So hopefully you've taken the time to think, what is that dollar amount? What is the amount that I need for the cash threshold? Now, how do you get there? I want you to think about what is your gap from the current cash that you're at to the cash threshold. And for some of you that might be in isolation or fully shut down, depending on where you're living or what's happening in your different markets, you may even want to think about what is the estimated gap to solve if isolated for the next 4 weeks. What will that look like? What type of deterioration to my cash will that take, into my business account? These are the questions you need to be able to answer like the back of your hand. I should be able to ask you this and you should know the answer. This is the gap, and this is what I'm doing to solve the gap, which we'll get to next. So how do you solve this gap? Now that I realized what it is, if you're already there, congratulations. That's fantastic. You're in the right place. You've set your cash rule in place. We're good to move forward. I have a feeling a lot of you will not be there, all right? I commonly see small business owners operating with not enough cash in the bank. Here are the most common options that are quicker to shift. Some key decisions would be 1, start taking less distributions, let that cash flow. 2, slow down your speed of growth or investment. You may actually be trying to grow too fast and you need to let cash catch up before then you continue to grow. 3, you may be having a perfectionism issue, right? Meaning I want to build the Rolls Royce versus you could launch the Toyota. You could put that service in the market and slowly grow it. A lot of people hold back and they don't go fast enough trying to perfect, and that ends up becoming very costly. Use financing, again, like how I do it, where you don't necessarily have to bring the profit and maintain the profit if you're looking for distributions. So instead, use a term loan or a line of credit if one's available to you. Just remember, interest equals insurance in this game. It is good to have good debt for growth. If you're using it for cash flow, that is good debt. If you are using debt to pay off other debt, bad debt, unless you're getting better interest rates and you're essentially refinancing that debt. It can be okay to run on debt again if you're smart. That's the point. And I see a lot of people choosing not to do that. It doesn't mean you have to spend it, because a lot of it is just the amount of cash that stays in the bank for the what if scenario. And a lot of times it's cheaper than your own cash, because you can put your own cash at work in the market personally. Maybe not in the last week, but generally you can go after different vehicles, and that will allow you to actually grow your money and then use somebody else's money to help run and grow and scale the business. So just a different way of maybe thinking when you're trying to solve that cash gap that needs to be in the account. So the other big way, though, is to pull the business levers, right? Once you've kind of made some key decisions around your own personals, once you've made some decisions around if you're going to use financing or not, the next question to ask yourself is, what are the levers you can pull that'll allow you to expedite putting more cash in the bank and solve essentially this cash threshold that you're wanting to get to. And a lot of you are going to freak out and go, I've got to get there tomorrow. Maybe. This might be a 2-year journey for some of you. It might even be 3 or 4 years based on the current market that's happening. But ultimately, the point is figure out what that number is and start to make better decisions of what you're going to spend and what you're going to take in pursuit of getting to that cash number. So we're now going to move into what are the cash flow levers. You now know the amount of threshold of cash you need to get to, right? And some of you are going, great, future, this is where I'm headed. Some of you are going, I just had it crushed in the last week. I don't know. Great. At least you now know what you're going to set the goal on. Or maybe in the current environment, you can say, this is my current threshold that I'm not going to go. It's lower than I want to. I've got a higher risk tolerance right now, but I need to set that threshold because now we're going to pull these levers. And we're going to teach you these levers in a way where it's how can you use this in everyday business, but we're also going to connect the dots of what to do in the current environment. And this is actually where I want to bring in Kyle Wyrick. Again, Kyle's going to come on. He's a business advisor here from Austin. He's fantastic. I'm sure there's some good shout outs here in the room of folks that work with Kyle directly. But nonetheless, Kyle is one of our best advisors when it comes to structuring financials. He's a go-to support that a lot of the advisors choose to reach out to. I'm really excited he decided to spend some time with us to help share this insight. So Kyle, I'm going to send this over to you if you don't mind. And why don't we start walking through these levers? I don't think we have your audio.
Hello.
Now we got it.
Success. Thanks, Casey. So cash flow lever is going to move through this quick. The good news is there are a lot of ways to positively impact your cash position. The big ones that we're just going to run through here quick: pricing, conversion, the terms and structure, your AR, your AP, and other expenses in general. So we'll spend a minute or two on each of these. As I run through these, I want you to pull that. Casey prompted you for a notepad when we kick this off. I want you to pull that out and I want you to build 2 lists. I want you to create a rule list and an exception list. Because as we're running through this, given the B2B, B2C, given the breadth of the significance of all these things, I want you to be grabbing nuggets related to these are things that I need to look at as the exception in the short term in this coronavirus environment. That are problem solving topics, and then I want you to be grabbing things that pertain to the rule. Like these are fundamental gaps that I have that I don't know enough about in my business, or things that I need to get better control over. So as we're running through these things, grab items for your rule, grab items for your exception, and then these are things that you can connect back with your advisor after the fact to go to work on these things. So pricing. You need to be priced right. Pretty obvious statement, but you need to understand the makeup of your pricing in order to understand really where your guardrails lie. And you want to make sure that you're considering your variable costs. You want to make sure that you're considering your relative fixed costs in that equation. And you need to factor in really what you want or need your profit to be. We've got a great price per unit calculator on our learning center. Some of you may be familiar with it. If not, go download that and use it in the course of guiding this exercise. But in the long-term perspective, really important for you to know to make sure that you're driving the right profitability in the business. In the short-term exception perspective, you may find that in order to win deals, you're having to negotiate more or match pricing by competitors or just get scrappy. And when you know very clearly where your thresholds lie, you can negotiate prices with a lot more confidence. Quick tip, don't forget your merchant services when you're factoring in your pricing if you take credit cards. And knowing that margin in every sale related to every product and every service is critical. And as you're going through this exercise of figuring out your pricing, make sure that you're understanding it in your current state. And also be considerate of changes that you might anticipate 6, 12, 18, 24 months down the road, so that you're not having to go back and adjust pricing frequently. Can create stress for you and for your clients. Next one we're going to dig into is conversion. Casey? Perfect. Conversion matters when it comes to just making every touch count. So it's really easy to fly through interactions and conversations with prospect or with clients And the key here to focus on when you're trying to control your cash flow levers is just not waste or miss opportunity. So in light of the emotional environment that we're in today, paralysis is a thing to be mindful of. So slow down in a B2B environment, really slow down and connect on your sales conversions. Make sure those handoffs are occurring well. In a B2C environment, we have on here, be more assertive following up on your abandoned carts, right? Just consider each of your touch points when you have an opportunity with a client to make sure that you land them. Be mindful of how you're doing that. Also make sure from a lifetime value of a client, whether you're looking for creative ways to continue an engagement, being mindful of your conversions is critical. And more flexible service offerings and your product customization you'll discover a ton when you're slowing down and being mindful of your conversions. You'll discover opportunities that you may have missed previously. Terms and structure is the next one that we're going to touch on. Really important to think about when you're paying for people or when you're paying for services before you get paid, you're essentially being your client's bank. A lot of that you may not have control over, but when we're thinking about cash flow, I just want you to think about it in that context. And you can lose sight of the fact that if that client's asking you for long terms of 60, 90, 120 days, or if you're not taking deposits up front, that essentially you're cash flowing your business on their behalf. So when you're looking for opportunities, approach your terms and your structure with that mindset. So try to collect fees up front wherever possible. If collection methods are a barrier, like if you didn't want to accept credit cards before, maybe doing so now is a great way to help free up and accelerate cash flow for you. I commented about not being your client's bank, so take control of your terms, try to negotiate where possible. And get creative, right? So think of incentives for cash flow, or Affirm seems to be popping up everywhere with every purchase I make online. So there are financing partnerships that you can leverage if your client needs more time to pay and you need cash now. There are mechanisms that you can use to solve both problems. So really important that you think creatively and you try to hold tension to getting your cash when you need it. Accounts receivable. So I know not everybody on this call deals with accounts receivable, but a really important point that often gets lost sight of. Keep it current. For those of you that are familiar with your accounts receivable aging reports, you'll have your current and then your 1 to 30, 30 to 60, 90 plus past due. Keep it current. So make a point to set clear goals that you want to have 99% current, 90% current, only 10% within the 1 to 30, whatever it might be. Set your goals, define your process, and make sure that you schedule the follow-up. Make sure you're consistently getting your invoices out timely. Make sure you're getting statements out timely. Make it easy to pay. Incorporate in your terms from a previous side a convenience fee. If they need added flexibility, consider assessing interest charges when past due amounts roll, right, as a motivator to get payments in timely. And in today's environment, super important to just pick up the phone and get and be assertive in collecting, right? So when you're trying to take control of your cash, setting clear expectations, holding tension to those expectations, and building some structure around that to help keep people within your desired process is huge. Again, to today's environment, you got to take quick next steps. So if clients are taking advantage of you, don't permit it. Don't continue to work with them or for them. And relative to the last slide, there are vendors that you can partner with to help with all this. Collection companies, factoring can be a tool as well. It's simply you're selling your accounts receivable to somebody else to go collect on, discounted. But again, cash flow now, when you're really trying to drive it, it can be a great tool to leverage. Accounts payable. I think the big thing here is get comfortable being uncomfortable negotiating. A lot of times we don't like to ask for what we need, or a lot of times we don't have the cash clarity around what our business requires. So feel free to ask for terms. If somebody is asking you to pay in a manner that doesn't align with your business needs, feel free to open up that discussion. If they're holding firm on what those terms are, see if there's a way for you to negotiate a discount if you exceed those expectations and pay more timely. I take your time is on here, as I know a lot of you like to just pay the bill the minute it hits, and I applaud the responsibility and professionalism of that. But when it comes to cash, whether you pay it the minute you get, if you have 30-day terms as an example, right? If you pay it the minute you get the bill, or if you pay it on the day that it's due, they're both on time, right? And so that might be 30 days of less cash that's available to you, or potentially earning you interest. So really just be mindful after you've negotiated terms that really fit appropriately for your business. Try to keep your cash for as long as you can. And if cash is tight, making a late payment, whatever the fee is associated for that might frankly be the best ROI relative to all of your financing options. Utilities is a great example that typically will afford a lot of grace. Not something you want to burn a bridge. You need to really look at these at an individualized level, but try to keep your cash for as long as you can. And consider your methods, right? So whether you're paying by check or cash, using credit cards for points that you can leverage, the method that you use to pay can also be something that earns opportunity back to you. The final point here on expenses, really the moral of the story here is be intentional, explore all avenues, really pay attention, be objective. So stick to your plan, avoid the emotional, the impulse purchases, the retail world, right? We know how to influence others from a sales standpoint, that even that great deal should afford you time to be able to consult your plan before you make a decision. And when we're dealing in an environment where cash is critical, really slow down your large investments to be mindful that you have a clear line of sight on how you're going to drive through your business and not get surprised by something. Every expense matters. Pay attention to all of them. And with every expense that you're pushing out, really be mindful on what the ROI is on this. There are negotiation opportunities here with expenses, whether it's SaaS partners that you might be working with. If you're in a pinch where you need to try to download data, pause services, start again later, really looking at every single expense, considering what it's for, what ROI you're getting on it, and making sure that you're maximizing the value of every dollar that goes out will help to make sure that you're keeping as much in-house as you can. And with that, thanks for letting me just kind of vomit all of that information on you for 10 minutes. I'm going to jump over into the chat. If you have any questions for me directly, feel free to take it there. Casey, back to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Kyle. I think what you said there at the beginning was so crucial. What you said was, hey, there's two ways to look at this. What are the levers in your current environment, that maybe you're making some exceptions on at this current time? But it's even more so to say, let's look past the current. And these are the rules we should be following all the time. And I hope when you went through there, if you're going, gosh, these are a lot of things to keep track of, I hope you found one or two that you said, these are actually the ones that I really need to maneuver on, or I need to think differently. I'm not at the right level if I want to really grow or scale or sustain the business through the current environment. So thank you for that, Kyle. Very helpful. I'm going to make this a bit more tangible. So what we've done is we've talked about creating a cash threshold. You now know the amount of cash. You're clear that you need to go build a pro forma. We're not going to do that on the group call today. If you don't have one, you need to get the pro forma in place. Then you're going to look at your levers, down the left side per se of all your different categories, which, Kyle did a great job walking through the different things you can play with for timing of cash. So much of this is timing of cash, even more than income at times. And now we're going to slow down and go, now that you've got that in place, how do you run your cash scenarios? Because this is the step you have to get to feel really comfortable in this current environment. Because when you have clarity of cash and the scenarios ran, it starts to take the thought out of decision making. And that's ultimately what we want to help you do today. Scenario planning shows you what decisions to make and also when you need to make them. It's as much as a what as it is a when, all right? The how is the hard part, okay? That's the hard part. That's hard for me to cover in a mass session like this, but what is it? And then when is it is what we're going to be chatting about. And I just wanted to give you some high direction. Feel free to set up your own scenario planning and your own guidelines, but I know a lot of people, maybe this is their first time owning a business through a downturn or something kind of scary like this. And so I just thought I would give very, very high direction on how I would structure scenario planning. I look at this as different colors of, green, yellow, orange, red, right? You can even add an oh crap at the bottom if you want. But ultimately, green is you're able to maintain or you're able to grow. The yellow is going to put you more at a 10 to 25% down, as the orange will put 30 to 50% down, and red 60 to 100% down. And I'm referring to revenue when I'm saying down. And knowing what this is going to look like, and there's people on this call that are in the red right now. There are people here on orange, people on yellow, people on green. Just depends on your industry and your situation. But your goal of what you do when you're in that situation is what's so important. I find a lot of people get this goal wrong. If you are maintaining and growing right now, you should be focused on increasing profits because you don't know if it's going to eventually affect you. So if you are maintaining or you are growing, you should still be taking advantage of cutting and levers and things that you can do to be able to tighten the ship in case it does affect you. So my challenge to you is your scenarios should be running on how to increase more profit. Think like a squirrel, how do you put that money away and cash away for that rainy day? If you're in the yellow stage and you're 10 to 25% down, that's where I think a lot of businesses are going to experience generally. Now, obviously the businesses that are more retail and people that need people to come into the actual brick and mortar, or maybe they're in tourism, yeah, you're going to be well below this much quicker. But on the yellow side right now, it's probably a 10 to 25% down for, I'll say, half to 70% of small businesses right now. You need to learn how to maintain the similar profits that you were maintaining. That's your expectation. How can you maintain those similar profits? Make the cuts. Don't just go, well, it looks like we can survive. No, because it could get worse. How do you maintain those similar profits? Orange is going to be 30 to 50% down. That's where I want you to focus on what are all the scenarios you have to do to break even. And when you have that cash flow, you can plug and play and shift and move things around to go, how does that work for me? For I'm able to continue to maintain the business. And if you're in the red zone, 60 to 100% down, your job is to minimize the burn. Literally, all the costs can you cut? I literally heard from a client, they just canceled their credit card because they had 3 tech fees that they needed to get out of, and that's how they structured it. I mean, look, it's about survival of the fittest if you're down and 100% down in revenue. Anybody that says, be careful, I don't know. Like when your back's against the wall, do what you have to do to survive. I am a big believer in that. So your whole goal is going to be how to minimize that burn and figure out how long of a runway do you have. And then it's going to be about getting creative and doing some of the other elements here I'm going to share on this call. And so a lot of you may be really struggling of like, well, where do I actually start from? What is my actual cash position? A lot of you may just go look and say, this is the amount of cash in the bank. I had one of our clients, one of the members here of the community, I met with last week, and I was like, what's your cash currently look like? And they said, this is the amount in the bank. And I said, yeah, but what about accounts receivable? How much will that go up? You're probably not going to collect as big as percentage as you're used to. Okay, because they were a B2B business. And I said, now remove the accounts payable for me. Help me understand what are all the bills you're going to have to pay and by what time. All right. Now, how about unearned revenue? How many deposits have you taken? How much revenue have you collected? By the time we were done, what went from I have 80 grand in the bank was actually negative 40 grand. That's actually what you have. In 30 days, if revenue turns off, that's where you're going to land. So you have to know this like the back of your hand. You have to know how much is in unearned revenue. You have to know how much is in accounts payable. These are the things you have to know as you want to navigate these scenarios. And I share this because everybody gets excited to look future and forward, and they forget about all the expenses that have happened in limbo in the last 30 days on credit cards, or on different, invoices that are coming that you're not going to be able to get out of because it's already happened from the past. So just make sure you have a good handle on these things when you're deciding where to start cash when you start to run these scenarios. Well, I'll give you a couple keys. When you're looking at that monthly cash flow, it's the month, not the year-end profit. Some of you are going to be mortified when you see what your profit at year-end might look like. push that to the side. Just look at the next 2 or 3 months if you're really in that dire situation and in the yellow, orange, or red zone. If you're in the green, I understand why you're going to be looking at the annual profit number. It's important to run all the scenarios, not just what you think is going to happen. You need to run all of them. This is an opportunity for you to get educated on the levers of your business and what things you can pull. This is what advisors are going to be great at to help you do this in your next meeting, is to help pull these different levers so you can identify how to sustain the business and push it down. On the financial trend versus leadership trend, what I'm referring to on that bullet is to say, you're going to want to look at this trend, and it just seems easier in your mind. Whatever you're leading your employees with is what you're going to put in the numbers. I'm going to lead one way. I'm going to plan more conservatively on the financials. I'm going to take another, whatever I'm leading, I'm going to put another 20 or 30% coverage in case I'm wrong. So just understand this has got to be your conservative financial trend. Let your leadership trend be the opposite, or be a different number, not the opposite, I apologize, be a different number that you're working through. And again, remember that there's going to be a time for decisions to take place. And a really good example of this is you turn off a service or you remove an employee. The timing of that cash, there still may be a payroll period to pay them for this week because you just removed them or whatever you're dealing with. Just make sure you're always looking at the moving pieces. That's the hard part where I continue to see people struggle at scenario planning. So these are the biggest scenario decisions that I'm hearing a lot of you are dealing with from our advisors, as well as through my own experiences. It's how much offense or defense to play, pay, personal pay, staff and labor expenses, major expense lines, leadership and communication, refunds and delays, revenue generation, creative revenue generation, and taking cash infusion. These are all things that I'm finding are extremely important right now that people are navigating as they run these scenarios. You may just look at, these are just decisions I have to make. I view them as, no, I have to plug these in a scenario and it will tell me what to do. I don't have to think. It does not have to be emotional. It is what the plan tells me to do. That's how you have to run a business in this type of environment for certain businesses. So your offense versus defense. This depends on your scenario stage, right? How aggressive or how protective are you going to be? Again, this is a better one-on-one conversation, but I can give a couple quick hits. One, push your marketing dollars through direct marketing channels over branding channels right now, but keep marketing. Even if you don't have money, keep doing direct marketing channels with your time, all right? Do not turn off the marketing. Think about all the businesses in 2008, 2009 that learned the lesson. Don't fall for that. You must keep driving marketing. The next one, get creative with your staff to align incentives. This is a great offensive play. That sounds weird. Well, I need to protect. Like, yeah, maybe you do need to protect, but start aligning with your team to go even faster or make a higher incentive for them to do more or get more. You're seeing a lot of the bigger companies doing this, increasing hourly rates. And I know that sounds crazy right now, but in certain businesses, it can actually really make sense to go on the offensive play and use commissions if you have to versus set terms. You got to be proactive in the pursuit of ramping up when the smoke clears. And this is why I'm asking you to do these things. Again, if you're all the way in the red zone and you're out for the count right now and not operable, I understand. It's going to be a different conversation of like, how are you going to rebuild? But a lot of you are not in that situation, and you need to figure out how to ramp up when the smoke clears. And if you are in a strong cash position, again, please start to invest in those things. You can go make deals with your vendors right now who really need the cash if you have the right position. You can increase margins. You can take advantage of this environment. Those are the differences of those that came in with enough cash for this type of environment and those that didn't. But be ready for it to affect you too. So be mindful of the decisions that you make. Again, when those are, I've heard some of our clients just tell us like, this isn't going to affect me. And I just go, I don't know. How many of you last week would have said Amazon was going to start to prioritize specific product shipments and tell other vendors, sorry, we're not going to distribute your stuff right now. That's happening, right? That got announced last night. So just be conscious of how fast the world is changing. You don't know when it's going to hit you. The other big piece on offense versus defense is this. Money today is survive tomorrow, and that may be the case for some, all right? Money today may be needed to survive. So if you cannot operate, pull solutions forward at a discount pricing. Match your discount to margin is what I'm asking you to do. and base it on a usage you'll be okay with. And so what I mean by that is when you are setting up maybe gift cards for discounted prices, or you're pushing because you can't operate, and you're pushing whatever options you have to drive, or even if you can't distribute products, you're pushing and selling the products. It's okay to really understand what your discount and margin is, because if you're in that dire of a cash situation, pull that money in now, and then you'll figure out the margin later. It's about survival at this point. You'll be okay based on usage, because a lot of people won't maybe use the gift cards. They won't actually follow through on the service providing, as well as they'll probably upsell and buy more when they're in the environment with you. Pivot the message to solve problems during the crisis for others. Make sure you're navigating and sharing. Obviously, it's a little annoying. We're all getting all these emails from everybody. Obviously, you're probably feeling that same way, but figure out a way to stand out from the noise. And then if you're still operating, meaning you haven't been fully shut right now, which is majority of people on the call, reprice, right? Cross-sell your promotions, focus on how to cover the cost. That's the goal. So be mindful of margins to ensure you're covering the cost. That goes back to what Kyle was sharing, and pull forward more revenue tactics from the can't operate. So my answer to you is look at what some of the really creative can't operating folks are doing and start to bring that into your business now. Get better at pre-revenue sales. Get better at different solution opportunities to where you can drive more revenue. That is what this is going to be all about as we navigate the next month together. On the personal pay and spending, you got to ask these questions. How far can you pull your pay down? How can you adjust your lifestyle right now? These decisions may dictate your business success depending on the situation you're in with cash. So be conscious of this, and not just now, but in the future outside of this pandemic, be processing these questions constantly. What does the owner or a CEO actually make of a business that's doing this much less in revenue? You may have been earning X, but now the business is 40% down. The owner would only make this much. You better be ready to take those sacrifices. And if you've become house poor, you've overextended yourself personally, go focus on how to structure that to open up that flexibility. By taking more now, the question is how much will it cost you later? That's what you have to think about. On the staff and labor expenses, there's a lot of questions in terms of what this looks like. So needing labor, right? Some of you that might sound crazy, but some of you need labor. Focus on the restaurants, the retail and beauty industries right now. Those that are being laid off, you can find labor nonstop. So you shouldn't have an issue with that. For those that have leadership or employees and teams and they're worried about what this is going to look like, here's a couple quick tips before you have to jump to more harsher environments. One, executives and leadership team is going to be your biggest risk. They're the most expensive. You usually don't have coverage over them as you start to see a dip. So keep them by demoting daily activities. What I mean by that is have them go back to doing things they might have used to do that other workers or employees are capable of doing. By doing that, you'll keep your most talented people that you've identified to help you grow the business with, but you'll start to help bring in dollars to collaborate against those salaries or those earnings that those higher executives are paying. Most people don't realize that's where your biggest overhead risk is. On the other side of this, creative compensation opportunities that I mentioned earlier, create commission opportunities to partner the needs of your employees of what you need them to drive, because you're probably pivoting away from where their comp may have been in certain situations. Move more employees to revenue generation tactics is another big lever you can pull here as you're starting to figure out how to strategize this scenario play. I've got about 4 more slides. If people are looking at time, this recording will come out. I told you we have a lot of content. I'm getting ready to hit some big bangs for everybody. So I apologize if 1 or 2 need to jump. I understand that, but just please know the recording is coming out. We knew going in advance there's a good chance we'd go over, and we didn't care because we knew we needed to get this content out for everybody. On the staff and labor expense side, temporary pay cuts across the board is a potential way to structure this. Many companies back in 2009, they would skip 1 pay period and then they'd make it up later with the organization. It's not ideal, but that's an option if you haven't explored it. Cut your lower performers first if you are looking at layoffs or removing people from the business. Cut your newer employees next. It's going to save you money later on when you have to look at a severance or time off to pay. And the reason why I say later is because all of you should be using furlough, a temporary layoff solution. Unless you know they were a low performer, you should be utilizing furlough. That's very, very important. Do not cut hours or force your employees to go on PTO. Avoid paying the PTO, sick, or severance until the full layoff. The best solution for the employee is this, if in dire, because they can start to collect unemployment. You're seeing states and provinces rally of how to get that unemployment as immediate as possible. Again, if you have specific questions on the legal side of it, we're not HR lawyers. I encourage you to reach out to HR lawyers. We probably have HR lawyers on the webinar today, but reach out to your advisor. They'll get you connected with somebody if you don't know somebody to make sure you know exactly how you want to approach this. But I'm telling you, utilize furlough and these temporary layoffs. It's the best scenario where you can bring them back quickly, depending on the timeline of this. On the leadership and communication side, for those of you that may be struggling on how to approach this with your people, you need to be a strong leader right now. You have to have the confidence. So be inclusive, have a transparent culture. Even if things are good, tell them where the business is at. Tell them some of the decisions you may be needing to make. Start to plant seeds with your executives. Be the leader. Don't hide and pretend everything's great. Be open and vulnerable. Your team will rally. Your team will rally. Watch what happens. I promise that'll be the case. You have to learn how to be a lot more gray right now versus black and white. Things are going to be changing constantly. Constantly, they're going to be changing. Right now, this is what it needed. These are the joint goals. We might change it tomorrow. And remove that perfectionism from your staff. It's all going to be about nimbleness and speed of implementation at this time. That's what it's going to look like. It's why I'm going over on my webinar. It's why I have a bunch of big blocks of text. I cannot slow down right now. It's about being nimble. The other big tips around leadership and communication is this: increase your team discussions and touch points. While they're remote, this may be required to do that. You may need to have more touch points. Get people on Zoom, get people on the phone chatting with each other when you can to keep that culture alive. And track daily and pivot daily based on what you're seeing when it comes to acquisition or attrition. And be hard in direct conversations to build trust. If you have to have that really uncomfortable conversation to remove someone or let them down on pay structure or whatever you're going to have to do depending on your situation, just be confident. Explain the numbers. They're going to get it. Explain the benefit to them by making the shift. Please know majority will understand. And again, we're here to help you through that in a one-on-one situation. And my other major fixed expenses are these: rent leniency, lease negotiation, or options. Reach out to your landlord. Ask for options. Vendor negotiations. Start negotiating, as Kyle shared earlier. Modification and deferment of loans with banks. Many banks are going to have programs they can tap into with the government on both US and Canada to be able to defer or modify based on the situation. And then just be careful of technology spend. We see a lot of, we have these ongoing subscriptions to technology. Only what you need. Downgrade where possible with your technology. On the refunds and delays, know your unearned revenue. Know how much you've collected up front. And I would limit your refund opportunities. Don't just hand all the money back if you're in a dire situation. Instead, incentivize people to not take the refunds and take more on a gift card or take it in, rebook the experience or whatever the business is. Push those refunds out to the best of your ability. Don't even be afraid to change your refund policy if possible, depending on how dire the situation is. Because your competitors, they're going to change their policies. So you might as well follow suit. And to communicate delays in deliveries and proact on what to expect. So if you are having delays in product deliveries or service deliveries, just make sure you're being very proactive on what they can expect, and you'll keep happy customers. Everybody's aware of what's happening. On the revenue generation side, we're almost done. Accounts receivable will slow down for many in B2B. Be ready for that. As Kyle said, he walked you through how to do that. Be ready for, if they haven't already, they're going to start to slow down just a bit. Daily, weekly tracking on short-term trends. I'm personally watching our conversion metrics, our acquisition of clients, and our client attrition. I'm watching it every day and making decisions based on that. And then incentivize is needed to keep businesses in play, all right? You need to incentivize as needed to keep the business growing. And what I mean by that is your employees, again, I just can't stop stressing that. Look for opportunities to incentivize those and your clients. These are some of the best success stories I've seen. Mint Creek, I'm a big fan of the farm. We go to the farmer's market. They said, hey, we don't do deliveries, but now we do. They did a total pivot to bring us milk, bread, anything we need. You've got gyms figuring out how to go online and creating those solutions and keeping all of their memberships. You've got 3D printers that literally were making a different product, became obsolete, and figured out how to go make valves in Italy to be able to drive and help save lives. You've got people saying, hey, we're totally shut down as a clothing store. We're not going to be able to work with you. We understand that. But buy this punch card to get your pants hemmed. Or buy this gift card, a $100 gift card for $75. Cash now for survival later, depending on the situation. There's small business movements that are helping right now. Buying local, buy gift cards, don't ask for refunds. These are the messages that we all have to be sharing out into the social world. It's helping educate people that are maybe not as familiar with what's going to happen to their beloved small businesses, especially more of the brick and mortar local folks in tourism industries. So the question I have for you, for those that were able to stay on and still join us, thank you for that. What I'm looking for here is to ask, what is a creative idea you've implemented? What is the most creative option you've seen so far? I would love to hear your perspective as you throw it down here in the chat. And I'd like to just hear some positive stories of this is what we've figured out how to solve. This is what we've figured out how to implement. And I think that's going to help. You're going to be helping a lot of other people that are maybe feeling stuck or maybe feeling kind of indifferent of how to maybe approach the situation. They're in paralysis. So again, go ahead and jump on chat. What creative things are you implementing? And what is maybe the most creative option you've seen so far? We're just going to give everybody a moment here to write that, and we're towards the end of our wrap up here, just so everybody's aware. I love that. Online design services for custom closets. Moving classes online, incentives online. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. The gym service company. That's awesome. Talk about a total pivot there from a gym service to go to disinfecting services. These are some really great options. I hope you guys are scrolling up and down to read some of these. And we'll keep the page up when we end here in a little bit so you can keep kind of working through these just to see if you see something you can bring over, into your industry. These are fantastic. Yeah, great, Patrick. You got to still book all those landscaping opportunities for the summer. I know there's going to be a few more that are going to trickle in here. I appreciate those that were willing to share and help support the community. And again, if you're having struggles thinking about what are some of these creative revenue generation options, I'm asking you to talk to your advisor. We've got a bunch of internal conversations going to help solve these. If you're in a place where you need cash infusion, pull all possible credit lines and open debt. You heard me right. If you have an open credit line you have not utilized yet, or if you have open debt, I personally encourage you to pull that money. You don't need to spend it. But we saw in 2008, 2009, we saw the clawbacks from the banks. We don't know if that's going to happen. It's the cheapest 1 or 2 months of interest you're going to pay to have that cash sit, to know you're going to have access to it, and that the bank can't come in and pull it. So I just strongly encourage you to take the money. You look at Mark Cuban online trying to really help to support the small business community. He's saying the same things. Pull any money you have, pull it, because you don't know how much this is going to tighten the economy. And you might need that money to be able to rebuild. If you are in a catastrophe, here's a couple solutions. We're going to go and launch these links for everybody. On the Canadian side, you can check out with the BDC. They've got some good programs that are set up where they've got deferred payments, low interest rates, and really setting you up to go interest only for a few months to get out of this. You do have to show how you have been affected. And then on the other side is the US. We're going to launch that one as well. And this is more of the disaster loan through the SBA. I believe there's 10 or 12 states that are in. If for some reason you have not been able to find this in your region, it's probably because your state has not been able to declare a disaster yet. All states or provinces, Canada's already full wide, but the provinces, US is not. All the states, you have to find the survey in each state and find it where you can actually submit your information to show that the state is in distress for small businesses, and then the funds will come to that state. And they seem very favorable in terms of terms. And I mean, this is pure stimulus if you can prove that you are in full catastrophe and full shutdown mode. Friends and family, market pullers, there's people that are pulling out of the market constantly that are going to be looking for other vehicles. I had an investor of mine ask if I was open to taking more money yesterday. That is a real situation. Show them your pro forma, show them your cash scenario plans, build some confidence. If you can make them a 10% interest rate, or that's way better than they're going to make in the next little while here in the market. There's going to be a lot more openness that as long as you show how clear you are on the numbers and what decisions you'll make to protect their cash, that can be a good cash infusion option to get past the next few months. Whew, what a lot of fire hose, what a lot of content. I'm so proud that all of you stuck around here for this. We talked about the current environment and our mindset. We talked about assigning a cash threshold. We talked about pulling the levers inside of that cash. And then lastly, we talked about how to drive cash scenarios. This is a very hard topic, as you can imagine, with the breadth of people on the call, and to give the content where we knew we'd at least get a couple items for everybody. what we're going to ask is that you've reached out to your advisor next. Have a one-on-one conversation about this webinar, and remember, stay calm. Put your cash rules in place. Use logic over emotion. If we all panic, it won't do any good for us. So again, talk to your advisor. Get this to the front of the line. Friendly reminder, go get signed up for Catapult. I'm sure it's the last thing on your mind, but it would really help us just knowing if you're coming, help us make some decisions of how we're going to approach it this year. If you're curious to come back to the next webinar for the group, May 13th is when I'll be back on deck. I'm going to talk about how to design a development plan for your team. And as far as our Cultivate Your Success, again, that's April 22nd. And all of these events can be booked on my.cultivateadvisors.com. Go ahead and get those signed up just to really get them locked into your calendar is why I'm bringing these up to you. And I have to ask, I've told everybody to drive. We're also being affected by this. I want to ask really point blank, what are the owners that you know? If you have an owner that you are working with or that you know, a vendor that could use some help right now, we're offering free time. We're not expecting a lot to sign up with us right this minute, but we are setting ourselves up to really juice and really move as this thing starts to move on. So we're all on deck. We're working more hours than any of us work normally. We are here to help. Please know that you can refer us, and we would be happy to take time. If your advisor's full, they'll get them over to another advisor, and we'll reward you. Remember, I talked about those incentives. I'll give you $1,000 credit for our client referral program terms and conditions, which you can find on my.cultivateadvisors.com. If you introduce somebody that does eventually become a client, we will credit your account $1,000. So please take advantage. We could absolutely use the help. Remember, you're simply the best. For those that joined us at Catapult and heard Vince and our team singing with our glorious voices here to you, to tell you you simply are the best. These are low times. These can be hard times for some. This is also an opportunity, and these can also have exciting times. Your skill is going to rise. Your nature of how you run, grow, and scale the business is going to shift. And together as a community, we're going to stick together no matter what, and we're going to see past this, and you need to remember that. So what did you capture? We're at the end. Congratulations. What did you capture here? Let me know in the chat. It really helps me curate our content. Also, if there's something we didn't hit, you want us to get more content out on, let us know. We're going to send this out to everybody. I don't think I've ever talked so fast in a webinar in my life to try to squeeze content to help as many people as we can. It's the only way we know how to help. So please let us know what is the content you need or what are the questions you're not getting answered. We will make sure we get that content out to the community as fast as we can. But please share, what did you capture today? What do you never want to forget that you did learn? Because it helps us know what's really being retained. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll keep this live so you can read the chats and take care. Let's go do the best we can.